2021, James Bond died. For real. On screen. First time in 60 years. The man who killed him off? The same actor the internet spent 2005 trying to get fired before he'd shot a single scene. Somewhere between those two moments is the answer to how good he actually was. By 2002, Pierce Brosnan's Bond had just made the highest-grossing film in the franchise's history. It should have felt like a victory lap. Instead, it felt like the end of something.
You serious?
Invisible cars, ice palaces, CGI that has not aged well at all. That same year, a very different spy showed up, Jason Bourne. No gadgets, no one-liners, just the man who could actually get hurt. Suddenly, Bond looked like a relic in his father's tuxedo. The producers knew it too. Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson made a call that sounds obvious now: go back to the beginning. Adapt Fleming's very first novel. Strip the character down to nothing and rebuild him from scratch. It's the same move Christopher Nolan made with Batman Begins. Take the icon apart. Find the man underneath the mask. Except this time, the man underneath had blonde hair and blue eyes, and that somehow was the problem. Roger Moore was blonde for 7 films. Nobody said a word. But when Daniel Craig got the part in 2005, the backlash was instant, and it was brutal. Too short, too rough, not suave enough. One tabloid ran the line, "James Bland." A protest site went up calling itself DanielCraigIsNotBond.com. It's still online today if you want to go look. None of that backlash was actually about acting. Nobody had seen him play the part yet. Nobody knew if this gamble would actually pay off. Not even the producers. There's only been one Bond film before this that dared to give the character real feelings. A strange, sad little movie from 1969 the franchise buried for decades. We'll come back to that, because Casino Royale was about to walk through the exact same door. Casino Royale didn't ease anyone in. The classic gun barrel opening, the one every Bond film starts with, gone. Folded into the story instead. No gadgets, no cue, no wink to camera before the kill. That's not a joke line. That's a man who hasn't earned his own legend yet. And then there's Vesper. For the first time in over 40 years in 20 films, Bond falls in love, and it actually costs him something. He quits MI6 for her, and when she dies, betraying him and saving him in the same breath, something in him closes for good.
I'm sorry, James.
By the final scene, when he finally says the words, "Bond, James Bond," it doesn't feel like fan service, it feels like a door shutting. That's the first real proof in this whole story. Not that the gamble worked, but that the actor could. The backlash was dead within a week of release, so naturally the follow-up doubled down on everything.
Nice.
Quantum of Solace picks up minutes after Casino Royale ends. Bond is angrier, quieter, more violent. Critics called it the weakest of the 5. Even Craig didn't defend it much. It was written in pieces during a writer's strike, and it shows. But even people who hated the film rarely blamed him for it. But here's the reversal nobody expected. The film that almost broke the momentum didn't kill it. 4 years later, Skyfall walked in and did something no Bond film had ever done before. It made over $1 billion. That's not an action villain. That's a man built to unsettle you, the same way a certain clown-faced criminal did a few years earlier in Gotham. The director admitted it outright. The influence was straight out of The Dark Knight. Across from a performance that theatrical, Craig doesn't compete for the scene. He goes quiet instead, and that restraint ends up doing just as much work. Skyfall wasn't just a hit, it was the highest-grossing Bond film in the 60-year history of the franchise. Critics loved it, audiences loved it. For one movie, everything the reboot promised finally clicked into place at the exact same time. But every time this franchise wins big, it makes its next move by doubling down on whatever just worked, and that's about to become a very expensive habit.
Skyfall's win taught the producers exactly the wrong lesson. If nostalgia worked once, do more of it. So Spectre brought back Blofeld, the franchise's original arch-villain, complete with the white cat and the scarred eye. And then it made a choice that split the fanbase in half. Bond's arch-nemesis revealed to be his own foster brother, motivated in the end by simple childhood jealousy. Some fans called it a bold gamble. A lot more called it the exact same trick Star Trek Into Darkness had already botched 2 years earlier, dressing up an old villain as a twist nobody actually believed. That failure belongs to the writer's room though, not to him. But the real cost of Spectre wasn't on the page, it was on Craig's body. During a fight scene with Dave Bautista, a man built like a small mountain, Craig tore his ACL in his knee. He needed surgery in the middle of production, mid-shoot, on a break nobody planned for. 2 days after Spectre finally wrapped, a reporter asked if he'd ever play Bond again. He later called it a stupid answer, given in the worst possible moment, 2 days after the most exhausting shoot of his life. But at the time, he meant every word of the exhaustion behind it. And here's what makes it stranger. This wasn't a one-time thing. His very first stunt scene ever on Casino Royale knocked 2 of his own teeth out. Quantum of Solace sliced open his fingertip and tore his shoulder. He was afraid of heights before that same film's crane sequence, 60 feet up on a 6-inch beam, and he did it anyway. He still calls the Venice sinking house sequence the stunt he's proudest of in the entire run. 5 films, 4 separate injuries, one man who kept saying he wanted out and kept coming back anyway. None of that proves he could act. It only proves he never faked his way through the part. No Time to Die tested that harder than anything before it. The original director walked away over creative differences. A pandemic pushed the release back almost 2 years. And while filming in Jamaica, Craig went down again, tearing a ligament in his ankle. And at the end of all of it, the man who wanted to quit made one final decision. He let Bond die. Not retire, not walk off into another sequel. Die. For the first time in 60 years and 25 films, James Bond does not survive his own mission.
So strip away the injuries, the backlash, the tabloid headlines. Forget the box office too. What actually worked? The emotional through-line is real. Vesper's death threads through all 5 films, quietly, right up to the final mission. That's never happened in this franchise before. The physical stakes feel real because they were real. And after a franchise that had drifted into invisible cars and ice palaces, Craig's Bond gave it back its credibility in a single film. But the weaknesses are just as real. In chasing one grand saga, the film sometimes lost the wit and glamour that defined Bond for 50 years before Craig ever put on the tuxedo. The Spectre retcon is the clearest proof, a plot twist that tried to matter more than it earned the right to. That one's a writing failure more than an acting one. Nobody can perform their way into a joke the script never wrote. And remember that one Bond film we mentioned earlier, the strange, sad one from 1969? The only one before Craig to ever give the character real feelings. Here's the part almost nobody clocks.
Spectre and No Time to Die put together are basically a 5-hour remake of it. Same Alps clinic, same villain's daughter as the love of his life, same choice to quit MI6 for her. The franchise didn't just borrow from its own past this time, it rebuilt an entire arc out of the one film it had buried for decades. So where does that leave him against the others? Connery had the effortless cool nobody's matched since. Moore had the charm, even when the plots made no sense at all. Dalton had the grit, almost nobody watched at the time. Brosnan had the polish of a franchise trying to survive the 90s. Craig had none of their ease. What he had instead was the most complete story arc this character has ever been given. That's not a claim about charm, it's a claim about acting, holding one character's interior life together across 5 films, which none of the others were ever asked to do. He wasn't the smoothest Bond. Ask most people who the greatest is, and they'll still say Connery out of pure reflex. But he might be the only one who ever made you believe James Bond could actually die.
If you want to know which Bond film actually deserves the worst reviewed reputation it's carried for 20 years, that video's coming next, and the answer isn't the one you're expecting. Subscribe if you want more of these breakdowns every week before anyone else gets to them.